Jerry and Charlie riding through the airwaves, bringing you the heat. Come on, pull your fans. Now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Chase Station.
Today is Monday, September 9th. The Mets have catapulted themselves into a playoff spot with a 9-game win streak. We haven't done a show in 10 days, and boy, is there a lot to talk about. Multiple sweeps, a series win over the Reds. I am Jack, a.k.a. Jolly, sunburnt on the nose after watching my New York Giants get pummeled at home in Week 1. And joining me is Jerry Blevins, who's also a little bit sad about his Bengals getting upset by the Patriots. But it's baseball season, Jerry. It's September, and the Mets are relevant. Let's go.
Indeed. This is about the Mets. So that's what we're here for. That's what you're here for as the listener/viewer. The Bengals looked rusty, which I'm okay with. Nobody played in the preseason. Jamar had one practice. But outside of that, man, the Mets look wonderful, and they're sitting right now in a playoff spot.
What a statement. Monday, September 9th. 19 games left in the season. The Mets are in the dance as we speak with a lot of fun matchups coming up. Since we've last talked, they disposed of the White Sox on the road, a sweep in their home stadium, which sounds easy, but for me was a terrifying prospect because it's hard to sweep any team on the road. Then they came home, and the big thing for me was getting the sweep against Boston, a team that was still in playoff contention, although I think the Mets kind of shut the window on them. Great pitching performance, specifically David Peterson on his birthday. We'll talk a lot about that start. And then against the Reds, they took the first two. Mark Vientos grabs another walk-off home run, the first Mets third baseman ever with multiple walk-off home runs, an unbelievable stat. They did lose that final game. The momentum finally ran out, but it's hard not to feel really, really good about the way this team is playing baseball right now on all facets, between great performances out of the bullpen, the starting rotation continuing their nice stretch, and the offense on some days pummeling teams and on some days doing just enough to get the job done and getting hits when they need them the most. So much good stuff to talk about, Jerry. I really don't know where to start.
I mean, let's start with the win streak, just how they've been playing recently. The sweep in Chicago. This is coming off a series where in Arizona, where they gave up a couple of walk-offs, or San Diego, Arizona, where we felt like they gave away two big games. We didn't feel like it. They gave away two big games. And then they needed, for the first time in the whole year, they needed a sweep. And they provided it against the worst team by far in baseball, maybe the history of baseball. They did it. And against Garrett Crochet, who struck out 46 guys in a row, it felt like, was untouchable, but then he got touched. Lindor hit him like he's been doing, a big home run, and they did it. That was huge. Not to mention, outside of that, it looked like that Edwin Diaz was riding the ship, started really exploding that fastball, had some decent sliders off of that, and that came in, at the end of the home road trip. Then they come home, and they face a Boston Red Sox team that is at the time was in a very similar spot than the Mets, fighting and clawing just within reach of that final playoff spot. They were reeling a little bit, and they swept them, and convincingly. Clutch performances, back-to-back sweeps. They love playing teams with socks. So that's good. And then they continued that streak and had a winnable sweep possibility going into last night, and they lost a close game. They're playing a very great brand of baseball, winning baseball, and they've been doing it for a long time. They look very good.
Before we go into the details of all these series wins, I do think the MLB schedule makers got a little cheeky with this, between the Mets going White Sox to Red Sox to Reds. I don't know. I put that together this morning. I was like,
the Red Stockings at one point.
The Red Stockings, of course. No, I mean, there's so many good things to talk about. I really want to hone in on the Red Sox sweep, because that's when I felt like things really came together for this team. There were moments in those games when they easily could have lost. A lot of situations where Boston had runners in scoring position with their best hitters up, specifically Devers, had a lot of opportunities in that series. And the Mets both starting pitching and bullpen got the job done. In Game 1, they held Boston 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. In Game 2, on his 29th birthday, David Peterson steals the show with 11 strikeouts, a career high. He's 9-1 with a 2.75 ERA. This is no longer a nice month stretch or a nice run for him. This is a good season for David Peterson, and year, I think, 5 of him with the Mets. He's having his best year. He's finally turned the corner. He looks fully healthy. He looks confident. He looks like he might be getting the Game 1 ball for this team. He's looked untouchable his past few starts. He's had a really nice run ever since August began. And then Game 3, they put the hammer down. Jesse Winker with another signature moment, a grand slam in the first inning. Poor Rich Hill and Kenley Jansen walking the moon in that 8th inning to seal up the win. The loss yesterday does not bother me at all because this was a team that had to run out of steam at some point. You'd love to see them hit a starting pitcher that has been hittable in past starts, but for them to go out there and reel off 9 wins, I'd mentioned it on last show, but after the gut punch Arizona loss, I said the Mets needed to go 21 and something in their next 30 games to reach the 87-win plateau, which, by the way, doesn't look like enough to make the playoffs anymore, but that's another point entirely. Their first 10 games in that stretch, they go 9-1, which is unbelievable. It's more than you can ask for, really. And now it's just about kind of keeping pace. And, I don't think you need to reel off 9-game win streaks, although we would love that as fans. It's just about winning every series from here on out. They've really put themselves in a spectacular position. After that grand slam, Jared, they were down 7 games in the loss column to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they made that ground up in 10 days. They're right there.
Yeah,
it's no longer fighting tooth and nail for the wild card 3 and having to conquer the Braves. Everything's up for grabs right now. Even you can argue the division. They're down 7 games to Philadelphia. They still play them 7 more times in the next 2 weeks. So
yeah, that's within reach on paper. That's a tall ask. I agree. But, for a long time here, we're dating back, 5 weeks when the Padres and the Diamondbacks were the 2 hottest teams in baseball. Everybody was saying it's just a race for the final spot. And the whole time I'm like, dude, there's a lot. At the time, there was like 30 plus games left, maybe close to 40. I was like, dude, the Diamondbacks and Padres will come back down to earth at some point. They're not as good as they're playing right now. I didn't think. And to say that the Mets are 2 games back of the Padres and a game and a half back of the Diamondbacks, they have a shot at the first wild card spot. They have a legitimate chance to chase it down. Now their dream is to just play baseball from a focus in that clubhouse, in that coaching room. It's win every day. Put your head down, play baseball, and when the time comes, you can look up and realize who you play and where you're at. That's what the mentality is in the clubhouse. But from our perspective, where we could take a bigger look and just look at the big picture, I don't think that they have a legit chance at catching the Phillies. But the first wild card spot is 100% in the realm of possibilities, statistically. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot to touch on, obviously, with Francisco Lindor and Mark Vientos. But I think when we talk player-specific stuff, I want to commend the pitching staff, which I think has been the key in this winning stretch and really just the season turning around in general. You can go back to June if you want to with that. In their 9-game win streak alone, they had the best rotation ERA. They had the best staff ERA across the board, second best whip in baseball, second best bullpen ERA in baseball, trailing only those Milwaukee Brewers who always have a great bullpen, and the third best average against in baseball. This is it's a team effort right now. We talk about how Peterson and Minaya have become 2 of the best starters in the game. I really want to talk about the bullpen. Weirdly enough, it was the first thing I said to you when we hopped on the Zoom call. It's like night and day, man. I think one of the coolest things is Reed Garrett becoming a man in the circle of trust again. He looks like his old self, and it's weird enough that the key to it all was throwing his best pitch less, like just concealing that split a little bit more and relying on his other stuff. He's gone 7 1/3, 2 hits allowed, 1 walk over his past 8 appearances. Danny Young, this guy was a minor league signing. No one wanted to give him the time of day. He was stashed in the Mets AAA for the longest time. Now he's pitching pivotal innings in September baseball. His last 8 games, 7 1/3, perfect innings, 9 strikeouts. It's unbelievable. Edwin Diaz, since surrendering the grand slam to Carroll, 6 innings, no earned runs, 1 hit, 1 walk, 13 strikeouts. The weakness of this team has suddenly become maybe its greatest strength, and it did bite them a little bit last night with their loss. Phil Maton finally let up a bad outing after being consistently great for 2 months. But this is now a team that when you get to the 7th inning, you feel like you're in a better position to win than ever at any point this season. It's cool.
Agreed.
Yeah.
On Reed Garrett, I really think that he was kind of rushed back.
Yeah.
Or he rushed himself, whatever the case was, because he looked rusty. That split finger, he couldn't get it anywhere near the plate. I mean, it was a non-competitive pitch every time he threw it. Now he's got it locked into where it's a tempting pitch, where he throws it close enough to the zone when he's ahead. He's throwing strikes. He found his rhythm again. I think it was just getting some more throws under his belt, some more outings, and he looks back. Not to mention, Jose Buto's kind of been up and down a little bit with his ability to throw strikes. They needed someone else to step up. Again, top of the chain, Edwin Diaz, he's the guy at the back end. That's the anchor. That's the guy that they paid $100 million for. He's got to be the shutdown 9th inning guy, and he is that for now. Outside of that, they've been shuffling guys in and out, from Daniel Nunez, who's, doesn't look likely to return at all. And he's been great. He was great when he came back, but that forearm strain, that's pretty risky business. But they had Phil Maton step up, and he was great. You talked about Reed Garrett. Danny Young looks really good. He has 2+ pitches. That sinker at 92 is really good. And that sweeper that he throws is very good. He still has to refine. If he can lock in where he wants to throw the ball in the zone and out of the zone, he's going to take a leap up and be an elite lefty in the bullpen. He's still raw, and it's worked to his favor because you never know when it's going to be a strike. He's unpredictable in that sense, but he's good enough. And outside of that, Adam Ottavino's looked solid. He's been consistent. Since June 1st, he has an ERA of 3.54 in 31 games. He's got 6 holds. He's been really like the Ottavino of old, where all his stuff is breaking in the direction he wants. He's been very good. Stanek has looked okay at times. He's still on the outside. Brazoban has been very inconsistent. He's like, that long guy. But they have enough pieces to fill in the back end of their bullpen when they're in a winnable game.
Yeah, it's really it's a relief to see, because there were we go back to August, there was that graphic SNY put out of just all the games that could have turned the Mets' way had they gotten a hold or a scoreless inning late in the game. And this 9-game win streak, that falls apart completely if you have a blow up in the middle. And instead, the Mets bullpen has been absolute nails, and it helps stand up the great pitching performances of your 3 lefties. I mean, we're going to talk about Severino a little bit, but Jose Quintana gets his 100th win in the Cincinnati game, narrowly escaping with some really wonderful double plays by Lindor and Iglesias. Now his last 3 starts, he's 18 innings pitched, 1 earned run, just like that. After having a terrible August for most of it, has completely turned a corner, and he's, put together a fine season for the Mets. We've talked a lot about his struggles, but his 2024 numbers on the whole, you take that every day considering what you're paying the guy and what you want out of him on this team. It's really the other 2 lefties that have just surpassed every single expectation. Sean Manaea looks like he's going to get an $100 million contract this offseason, much deserved. Hopefully it's with the Mets in some capacity, but for now, let's enjoy him, because since July 30th, he has the most strikeouts of any pitcher in baseball. That's remarkable. This isn't remarkable. He's never really been a strikeout first guy. He's been a great pitch to contact guy with plus stuff. And ever since just watching Chris Sale and changing the way he attacks hitters, he's become an ace. He has the 3rd best whip in MLB during that time, the 4th best opposing average. And then, of course, David Peterson as well. Since August began, 44 innings, a 1.81 ERA. So many good things to love about this pitching staff. I don't know. I can read you out stats all day. I mean, they have 7 shutouts since July 11th, which is the 2nd most in MLB. They didn't even have a shutout until 10 games into the second half. And now suddenly on a dime, they've turned into one of the most dominant and fearsome pitching staffs in the National League. Very cool to see. Really cool to see the pitching take center stage. Is I think the overarching thing I want to get across here is that we talked so much about this potent offense and how they can really take over games and explode in certain innings. I really do think this 9-game heater does not happen without these superb pitching performances you've gotten over the past week and a half.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely this surge of the Mets' relevancy since the team meeting, since June 1st, if you want to put a blanket on it, it's the key to them being relevant and being in the position that they are. But the rotation has always been the biggest question mark since spring training. The question of who is Luis Severino coming off his worst season of his entire life. He's figured it out and he looks great. To me, the rotation has been the reason why. So their offense should have been good. The rotation was a question mark. And then when Singa went down, I was seriously like, I don't think this team has enough to make the playoffs. They're going to be competitive. They're going to win some games, but Manaea looks like an ace. He's game 1 starter for me. Then it's Severino and then Peterson in 3. 1, 2, 3. Those guys have been great. Jose Quintana has been league average. That's exactly what you want from Jose Quintana. Obviously you would want him to be better than that. But that's who he is. He's a guy that can go out, make 32 starts a year and give your team a chance to win some ball games. Paul Blackburn has been really good since his return, exactly what you would want out of a 5th guy. He's consistent, gives your team a chance to win the ball game. But that has been the reasoning, but not only that they're in the position that they're in, but if they make the playoffs, the rotation is the reason why they can win in any series. They can beat the best teams with who they have. Manaea can put up zeros against anybody. Severino has the capability of putting up zeros in anybody. And the way David Peterson is pitching, he can put up zeros against anybody. And then get to that, in the 7th inning, you can have Budo to Garrett to Edwin Diaz or Danny Young fill in that 7th role against the lefty, any bit of that. And this is a team that can win some ball games in big spots. It's truly remarkable.
It really, that is the word for it. I mean, think about the last time the Mets were in playoff position and we were talking about their starting rotation. Think about those names. It was Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Chris Bassett. And that trio that we thought was unstoppable turned out to be stoppable. And now you're in a similar position where you're gunning for that top wildcard spot potentially. And your 3 on paper of Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, and David Peterson. If you told me that in March, I wouldn't believe you, just because on track record and recency bias and what I know about each guy, that's a threesome I would be terrified going into a playoff series with. Now, they've given me all the confidence in the world that they can bulldog their way to any series win against any team. And that's a really, really powerful feeling for a fan, especially after watching how bad things got 3 months ago. I mean, I know that we do this all the time, but to just think about all the things that were said in May and all the things that happened on the field and realizing that that's still the same season that we are currently watching is remarkable. And I think that's a great segue because we talked about since June 1st. You know who's only really been playing since June 1st, Jerry? Mark Vientos, who I think is the best third baseman in the National League offensively, at least. I mean, I have never been so wrong about a Mets player, I think, in my life. Because the way that this dude has carried himself and put the team on his back in certain games, obviously the walk-off home run against Cincinnati takes center stage. But even just do his last 10 games, 4 home runs, an OPS over 1,000, hitting 350 in that span. He's playing the most baseball he's ever played in his career. And he's having his best month in September. He's in foreign territory in terms of the workload he's put on his back this year. He's made great defensive plays as well. I'm over the moon with how Mark Vientos has come about this 2024 season. A season that could have been a disaster when you talk about Beatty's underperformance and then his ensuing injury. Third base could have been a hole in the Mets lineup that ended their season. Like we've talked a lot about not getting offensive production out of positions like third base or corner outfield or first base and how that can really hamper a team's offense in general. Vientos moving into the 3-hole and getting better, it's unbelievable.
I think Ronnie nailed it on the broadcast after his walk-off home run. He said, "This is the second most important bat in the lineup."
Yeah.
Because it's Lindor, and Lindor has been the catalyst. Lindor is the MVP in my eyes, which we can talk about later if you want. But outside of Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos is the reason why the Mets are dangerous. I thought his batting average, and it has, his strikeout rates have gone up since he moved to the top 3 in the order. Rightfully so, because pitchers are going to attack him differently. But his ability to drive the ball with power, legit all fields power, hasn't gone away. He's hit the pitches. He's hit good pitches. He's hit bad pitches. He's just elite. I'm going to refrain from saying he's the best offensive third baseman in the National League simply because of longevity. You got to do it for a while, consistently for me to give you that. But he is the brightest spot, I think, in this season. The hopes that you can log that man into third base for the foreseeable future, that he's going to be in the middle of that lineup somewhere or the top of that lineup. Pete Alonso's had a good season. He has. It's not fair, the perception of Pete Alonso's season, simply because it is fair, because he has given you 40 homers. He just hasn't looked the part. I mean, he's having a OPS plus of 124. He's hitting 240. He's slugging 467. He's got just under an 800 OPS. He's having a good season, but not the season that you would hope for from Pete Alonso. He's still got an outside shot at 40 homers. But he's already got 31. He leads the team in homers. Lindor's got 30. Vientos, though, is the other power threat. Not JD Martinez, who's looked his age a little bit. He's still very good at a 120 OPS, but he doesn't. This isn't the prime JD Martinez that you were hoping for, or you know what I mean? He's been good. He's been every bit of it. His leadership off the field can't be understated with how valuable, and Mark Vientos, I 100% believe that he wouldn't be where he's at without the leadership of JD Martinez. But outside of Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos' emergence as an elite hitter is the reason, and he's good enough at third. He makes some spectacular plays. He makes, he's not a great defensive third baseman by any measure yet. I don't know if he'll ever get there, but he's good enough, and his bat is so good that he's elite right now. Elite. So, to me, he's the brightest spot of what happened in this season, and I couldn't be a bigger fan of him as a person either. I think this guy is special. When we had that flip the script for SNY, I got a chance to kind of just hang out with him one-on-one for a little bit, before and after and during. His mentality, that's my favorite part of sports, is like the mental approach, how you go about your day. Baseball is different than any other sport where your focus has to be on every day. It is unlike any other sport in the world in that sense. You don't get days off. You don't get a reset if you're an everyday player. I believe his mentality and his approach is a sustainable framework for him to have success as a big league ball player. I don't think a slump would bury itself. Obviously he's going to have hard times, but his maturity, the things that he's handled it, the way he's handled it, his philosophy on how he's handled it, I'm a huge Mark Vientos fan.
I mean, you nailed the mentality part, because So right now, 124 professional games is the most that Vientos has played in any season of his professional career. 31 games at AAA, 93 at MLB. And he's going to play the rest of the season. So he's going to get to around 140. Logically, you would expect the guy in his first real year producing at the big league level who is asked to step into a larger role in this foreign territory of games played to regress in some capacity. And instead, the dude has completely owned the spot. And that's really special, especially out of a guy that is 24 years old. Same age as me, 24 years old, kid, basically. To see him step up prominently, and by the way, you can go by the numbers with this as well. In this 9-game win streak, let's take it from September 1st. In the exact same window that Lindor and Vientos have essentially not carried the offense, but have done the most production-wise. Brandon Nimmo, 4 for 22. Alvarez, 2 for 11. Marte, 4 for 18. Pete Alonso, 4 for 24. They've picked up the slack of your core guys. And I just made the point of, if you have this black hole at third base, or at least league average production at third base, that can really sink your season. Take Mark Vientos out of this lineup right now. I mean, it's really hard to imagine this team not only stringing together wins, but even staying afloat in September. So I think, mentality is half the battle. You hear that a lot in sports. I think his mentality has been a massive factor in this because I think you've always known that the strength, at least the power of his swing was always there. But for him to step it up in every other facet of his game as well is really impressive. And also I put his spray chart at the bottom of our sheet just to show where his home runs have gone this year. The dude's got basically half of his home runs are to the opposite field. That's awesome, especially at Citi Field, no less, with how cavernous that ballpark can be for left-handed hitters. For him to be doing that is just remarkable. So we can't say enough about Mark Vientos. And we haven't even talked about the guy that is getting chance for MVP every single time he steps up to the dish at his home stadium. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. First of all, for that, the MVP chance, I love it so much.
Chills.
I love it for the fans. I love it for the player. It feels like a full circle moment from, the thumbs down and the complete underperformance in his first year after the big deal. To see him become this player, it's pretty awesome to watch. The fans embrace him. He's been the real reason why this team is where it's at. And that's who you wanted to sign. You wanted the guy to be this, and he's doing it. It's wonderful to see. He is I look at Fangraphs and they have certain, parameters and things that they rank guys, and he's the 10th best offensive player on the year, considering how slow he started. Pretty remarkable. He's been doing it. We finally saw during this hit streak that he had, you finally saw that streak of how you carry a team. Like, he's been this steady performer, elite, but he hadn't had like a remarkable week or 2 weeks where, he hits 10 home runs. But this 16-game hitting streak where he hit 6 homers, he hit 353 and over an 1100 OPS. That's the kind of little mini streak that can throw a team on his back. He's been so good since that June 1st mark. So I had you before the show throw onto our doc, all the offensive numbers since June 1st. And what Francisco Lindor has done, most importantly, consistently. He hasn't had this. He's been that steady force, constantly moving the boat in the right direction. He's hit 297 with a 551 slug for a 918 OPS. That is an MVP level, not to mention he plays Gold Glove shortstop. Like, it's truly the guy that you signed when you signed that huge contract. This is who you were hoping for. And he's got an under 20% K percentage. I think he's going to square the ball up every single at bat. It's the steady presence that you want.
A fun game I like to play is I go to his Baseball Reference, I trim out the Cleveland years, and I just watch all the numbers get better and better every year that he's in a Mets uniform. Every year, every single facet gets a little bit better. The OPS gets better. There's more stolen bases, more home runs. There's no reason to believe that Francisco Lindor won't even get more better in 2025 because that's the trend that he's on right now. And Fangraphs, coincidentally, just released an article this very morning about how Francisco Lindor's Hall of Fame case is already plausible, and basically we're only halfway through his career. And they included a chart of NL position player leaders since June 1st. I'm so glad you asked me to pull those numbers, Jerry, because Francisco Lindor, if you like WAR, and not everyone does, but I'll say it here anyway, he's been worth 5.7 wins above replacement since June 1st. The second highest value is Ellie De La Cruz at 3.9. So you can make an argument that he's been 2 wins more valuable than any other player in his respective league. If you want your more concrete numbers, his 300 average since that mark, it's only bettered by Jackson Chourio. His 557 slugging, only bettered by Shohei Ohtani. His 160 OPS plus, only bettered by Shohei Ohtani. You're talking about the guy that everyone compared to Babe Ruth for the past 3 years. It's him, and it's Francisco Lindor in the league right now. And it stinks that these 2 seasons are coinciding. Otherwise, this MVP race feels a lot more clear-cut, and we'll talk about it. But for it to be Francisco Lindor that is the person that is doing this for this team is so... It's so big because that $341 million contract, of course you're excited for a star player to come and put on your uniform, especially at a position that has not been strong in Mets history. But the prospect of living up to that is daunting, not only for the player, but for the fans that, are diehards and want to defend their guys and want to see their guys succeed. That first year was incredibly deflating. It's very reminiscent of Beltran's first year back in 2005. That was just not up to snuff. To see how things have come together in year 4, to see how he's become such a leader, to see how after home runs and stolen bases and big hits, he's just got this serious look on his face like he's ready to do more day in and day out. To see him having played every single game this season, and he probably will play all 162 by year's end. It's one of the most special seasons I've watched as a Mets fan, MVP or not at the end. It's a season I'm going to remember for a long time, and I hope in the last 20 games he continues to ball out, he reaches 30-30, and he makes more moments in these last 3 weeks.
Yeah, truly special.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it while it's here.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
And a guy, when you sign a long-term contract and you expect him to be the player that he is now, a lot of your franchise's season depends on if he is who his baseball card says he is. If he's just the guy that he is on his average season, you have a good chance of winning. And so many times we've seen big contrasts in all sports. Like right now, so I'm in Ohio for football. The contract that the Browns signed Deshaun Watson to is the sole reason why they are terrible. Because they have arguably the best defense. And if they had an average quarterback, this team could win. But they've locked him up and they gave him so much guaranteed money. And under a salary cap league, you are hampered. You are at the mercy of your franchise quarterback, and they gave him that, and he's been. Francisco Lindor could have been that for the Mets, but instead they got their guy. They got a player who this year and over the second half of the last couple has been the guy that you signed up for. He's truly stepped his game up this year. Just absolutely fantastic what he's been capable of doing. The face of your franchise for years to come. Special to watch.
Absolutely special. I mean, there's examples of those bad contracts in baseball too. You look at, a guy that was a Met before he signed his big deal, Javier Baez, has really hamstrung the Tigers from making a lot of impactful moves. You have Anthony Rendon on the Angels. There's so many ways where this could have gone sideways. Even if Lindor had just stayed as what he was in 2021, which was a league average bat and great defense, and there go my lights again, that would have been, I have to stand up, there it is. That would have been detrimental to the team. Even if you accept that play for what it is, even if it's a net positive, you paid him to be the guy that is leading your team to the playoffs, and that's what he's been. And it is special to say the least. But we actually did just lose someone who's been pretty special to the team over the past month. Jeff McNeil on a little, looping breaking ball that hit the padding on his left wrist. It appeared as nothing. He stayed in the game. He turned a fantastic double play in the next inning. And then we find out after the game that his regular season is over. and that if the Mets, make a deep run into the playoffs, you may see him again. But in all likelihood, Jeff McNeil's season has wrapped up rather unceremoniously. It really is a shame, and I didn't want to, bring the mood down, but it is worth talking about because he really was in the process of turning his season around in the second half, and his spirits were higher and all that. But it means two things. One, the Mets lose a versatile option in the corner outfield spots and second base, and they lose a bat that was producing a lot in their lineup. The other side of that is that Jose Iglesias is now your everyday Mets second baseman, which you can construe a couple different ways, but definitely big news, Mets world, in terms of the roster.
Yeah, it's a big loss, man. Regardless of how he was offensively, he was a threat, a left-handed bat.
Mm-hmm.
That could do some things. His defensive versatility gave you so many options. It's a big loss. It truly is. And thank goodness that they signed Jose Iglesias, and this guy has stepped up because he has done an amazingly, like what he's done for his career for this ball club. Amazing. Like maybe that's the most surprising piece of this whole team for me is Jose Iglesias being the guy that he is this year. It's wild to think about. We talked about the Fangraphs, rankings. Overall, he's the 290th player, but he's in limited at bats. He hasn't played a ton. His impact is huge. He's clutch. He's great defensively. He still doesn't have an amazing amount of range. Like that is visible for me to watch every day, but anything he gets his glove to, something special can happen. He's magical with the glove. He's got like 2 million infield hits this year. He's like shockingly fast for me, shockingly. Like he's so quick to get to first base. Like it's remarkable. And I feel like every time he's at the plate, he's going to get a hit. Like I really do. Though he's been locked in every single at bat. I hope he stays kind of locked in. But he's going to play a bigger role for sure.
Yeah. Hitting 378 with runners in scoring position this year is Jose Iglesias. That's got to be the best mark on the team. It's a guy that couldn't get a job in Major League Baseball last year, and now he's playing middle infield every day for a team that's trying to contend for a playoff spot.
He literally couldn't get a call up. He spent the entire year in the minor leagues.
And, you can speak volumes to his presence in the clubhouse and all that, along with guys like Severino and stuff. I think the beautiful thing is that even with, David Stearns coming into the fold and, now he has this massive budget to work with. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of that this offseason. I still think his most impactful moves were the ones that just flew under the radar, the stuff that he was used to doing, like picking up a guy like Danny Young and converting him into a leverage reliever, like signing Jose Iglesias to a minor league deal and turning in this one of the best offensive seasons by a Mets second baseman ever with the amount of time that he's played. But now it's going to stand up. Now you're really going to see what Jose Iglesias can do, because we haven't seen him play every day. We've seen him play in platoon splits, and we've seen him be a defensive sub and a pinch hitter. Now he's your everyday starter. He is the option at second base. And I really hope he makes the most out of these last 3 weeks, because the Mets are going to need him. I mean, you talk a lot about Vientos and Lindor producing and how the core guys like Nimmo and Alonso have stepped back a little bit. That's a guy at the bottom of your lineup you need to produce. And I think that he's shown no signs of regression. And it really helps when guys like Harrison Bader can have a big moment in that Red Series, or Tyrone Taylor produces off the bench. But Jose Iglesias, he's going to be in there every day, so you're going to need him big time.
Another name I wanted to mention on those acquisitions is a guy named Luis Torrens. Francisco Alvarez offensively has taken a huge step back, and whether it's the injury related and then hitting a funk and mentally having to work your way out of it, I still believe in him. I still think he's very capable. I still think his ceiling is Hall of Fame. I truly do. But in the right now, Luis Torrens has stepped up every time he's played. From his, he's been fine offensively, but it's his defense and the way he's thrown guys out is just an absolute weapon with ease. Just a nice under the radar team depth type of guy that when he's in, you're like, sometimes, no offense to guys, but like when guys of the past, say Lindor, needed a day off, and you would have Luis Guillorme playing shortstop. Guillorme's a fine player, but that is such a step down that you're basically, hoping that other guys carry you. When Luis Torrens is in there, he's filling in. He's a solid contributor. He's been great. Like I really love the depth that he brings, but you'll need these guys in big moments. You're gonna do defensive switch with Marte. Having Bader play center field is remarkable. Tyrone Taylor's been a very good outfielder. You have guys that contribute the depth of the roster to keep you a viable team and a competitive team, even when you don't have your A lineup in there. And in baseball, that's such an important aspect to why you can't. How many getaway days has Carlos Mendoza rolled out? Tyrone Taylor, Harrison Bader, Luis Torrens, just ran them out there in the lineup, and the team has won because they do enough. It's great what they've done roster construction wise.
And I'm glad you brought up roster construction in general, because we're in go time where every game is must win for the Mets, and roles are being solidified at this point. Like, they don't have time to wait for Alvarez to get right anymore. It's now going to be pretty much split tandem, maybe even favoring Luis Torrens from here on out. Obviously, Jose Iglesias, he's your starting second baseman every day now. Harrison Bader has lost a substantial amount of playing time through his slump, and warranted. Even if you're getting that plus defense, you need offensive production. So kind of the same goes for Starling Marte. He came back. He played, I think he started 2 of his first 3 games, and now he's stepped back into a reduced role. He played yesterday, got a big hit there, but Mendoza is unafraid, regardless of what your paycheck is or what your name is, to shuffle in guys in and out on a day-to-day basis to give the team the best chance of winning, which is why you see a guy like Tyrone Taylor get efficient playing time, and why you see a guy like Luis Torrens getting starts over who you believe is going to be your franchise catcher for the next 5 or so years. And this is a Mendoza love pod in general, but when asked if he believed that this team has the it factor or the X factor, he didn't say if or, maybe. He said that they do. And that's because of the way that they operate and the way that they are going about winning these games and, shuffling in Danny Young and leverage innings and stepping back Adam Ottavino. Track records go out the window. Resumes go out the window. It's who's producing now, who's going to give us the best chance to win right now. And I feel really, really confident with the leadership of this team, both in the players department and the coaching department.
Agreed. So your Carlos Mendoza all year long has put, and I believe it will be for the rest of this year, has put every player in a position to be successful. It gives them their best chance to have success. So this is all on player performance. I don't see Mendoza making huge mistakes on how he runs things, when he makes changes, leaving guys in. He's done an amazing job of managing this team, and it'll come down to player performance like it always does, but it'll be with the best lineup and the best spots moving forward. And that's all you can ask for as a player. So,
yeah. And there are potential reinforcements on the way, although I don't think the Mets are operating under that being a solid thing. We got some interesting Kodai Senga news, who threw a 25-pitch bullpen and is now expecting to return in the regular season, which I think was not in the cards for most fans. And
I would have bet against it.
I would have certainly bet against it. He's eligible to be activated September 25th, so we will see and what the Mets decide to do with that, whether it's a bullpen role or a piggyback situation. Christian Scott threw a bullpen as well. And this is big news because we just found out live on the pod, I don't know if you saw it, Paul Blackburn no longer starting for the Mets tonight. We don't know what the situation is. Tyler McGill is going to start tonight instead, so the Mets are making a pivot there. McGill will get a third turn in the rotation. But there are still questions to be answered, potential spots to be filled for this Mets team, and you just hope that it all comes together by that final week of the season where you're hopefully gearing towards a playoff series, hypothetically. But either way, when you have Manaea Peterson and Sevy at the top, you can feel pretty much good about the pitching staff in general.
Agreed. Yeah, I hope Blackburn's okay. I hope it wasn't a major setback or anything. But again, Tyler McGill has been fine in his 2 starts since filling in for Blackburn. He had a pretty good outing against the White Sox, and he didn't pitch a lot his last outing because they didn't give him the chance. And again, when you need to win every ball game, you're going to have a quick hook here and there. And McGill was that guy, and they won the ball game that he started. So I think he did all right. This is a better lineup than the White Sox by any stretch, of the imagination. But give your team a chance to win. I don't expect 7 shutout from you. I expect you to be competitive and keep the Mets within striking distance, or you'll be pulled. So that's just how it's going to go. Be competitive, don't be egoless, and expect a quick hook, and just go out and do the best you can.
Fully agree. Yeah, the Mets won both of his starts, so hopefully they can pull out another one tonight. The Blue Jays haven't announced their probable starters yet for this series, but we think we know them. It's going to be Chris Bassett, Bowden Francis, who has been insane for Toronto ever since he started throwing a splitter, and Kevin Gausman. So you're getting 3 pretty good pitchers while you're on the road in Canada for this 3-game set. A team that took a game from the Braves but ultimately lost that series, so you kind of have to match that production. Every series becomes must win regardless of circumstance when you're this deep into a season. But I got to say, I'm feeling confident about this team right now. I'm feeling like they can take on anybody and beat just about anybody. And the main goal here for me is, you have this week of games where it's at Toronto and then at Philly before you come back home. I'm eyeing up that weekend series in Philadelphia. That's going to be a big test for this team because Philly has looked very strange in the second half. They really looked like they were about to start pulling away again, and then they lost 10-0 to the Marlins yesterday. So I really don't know what to think of that team right now, and I'm hoping the Mets can keep the good times rolling once they get there.
Yeah, they're gonna play them a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And the Mets have the 3rd hardest schedule remaining.
Good. You know what?
In all of baseball.
Good. I'm so sick of easy schedule. We should win these games. I'm sick of it. You want them to be iron tested going in. Huh? Absolutely. If you're gonna,
you wouldn't take an easy schedule the rest of the way.
No,
instead.
Absolutely not. And I will die on this hill because if you're going into a playoff gauntlet where there's the 12 best teams in the league, I want to be playing good teams for weeks leading up to that. I want the team to be on that difficulty barometer for the past 3 weeks, because I think if you get in beating these bad teams, good for you, but it just leaves you ill-equipped, I think, in those matchups. So you know what? I see 7 games against Philadelphia, I say good. I see 3 games in Truist against the Braves, I say good. I see 3 games at the end of the season against the Brewers, the same team that embarrassed you the first weekend in the season, I say good. Because that's what this team needs. They think they can beat anybody, good. Go out there and prove it.
Hey, man, I like it.
Let's do it, baby. Come on, man.
Yeah, man, they're going to face... I mean, Vladdy Guerrero has established himself as one of the best offensive players in all of baseball. After his breakout rookie campaign, they're like, all right, who are you really? He is absolutely crushing it. One of the 10 best offensive players in the game, reestablished. Outside of that, they've got, George Springer still. That's pretty much it. Maybe Dalton Varsho he's the best defensive player in all of baseball, according to most metrics.
Yeah.
This guy's special defensively, but he's got some pop in his bat. There's a dude, their DH/first baseman, depending on where Vladdy plays that day, Spencer Horwitz.
Who is not related to Jay Horwitz, by the way.
He's not, unfortunately,
I heard that said
for
on
him.
Radio. Yeah, it's not true.
Yeah. He looks like a really good left-handed bat. You talked about their rotation, still very, very, very good.
Very good.
This team was built to win. They just didn't do it. And their bullpen's pretty solid with former Yankee Chad Green in their closer role.
Oh, yeah, having a terrific year.
Genesis Cabrera, the former Cardinal, being their setup guy, lefty that throws a million. They've got some arms. So this is a good team. This is still a good team with some higher end talent than most teams with their kind of record. The gauntlet starts. This is you're facing teams that are very, very good. There's a website called Tankathon. I think I mentioned this last time.
Okay.
Strength of schedule.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So the Mets are third. They have 7 against the Phillies, 3 against the Brewers, 3 against Atlanta.
Good.
They're counting the Blue Jays as the easier side of that because of their record, and then the Nationals, who always play us pretty well. Outside of that, the Phillies have the 7th hardest, but again,
7
uphill
against
battle.
us. Yeah.
Then the 3 teams that we're chasing, the Braves have the 15th hardest, but they have a series 4 against the Reds, 2 against the Nationals, 3 against the Marlins. The Padres have the 19th best schedule. They play some good teams, and the Diamondbacks, where are they? They
I
play
think they're 10th.
7 against the Brewers and 3 against the Padres, and then outside of that, they got the Royals, the Rangers, the Giants. They might face our old friend Jacob deGrom in the big leagues at some point.
Wow, how fun. Well, we
I
just
know,
saw,
man. He made his.
we saw Justin Verlander last night give a bunch of home runs
boy.
to Pavin Smith. So
Yeah, 3 of
former
them
Met
to
there
one
didn't
guy.
succeed.
That's pretty incredible. No, but this is it. You're in September with a chance to make the playoffs. They're in a playoff spot. There's a lot that can go on. Who knows how it's going to go, but this has been a really exciting team, and one with which, if they don't make the playoffs, I will be severely disappointed. And that's saying a lot considering where they were after the month of May.
Yeah, I mean, if they, just quick math here, if they go 500 the rest of the year, that's an 86 win team that probably doesn't make the playoffs. That's fairly deflating. So I would be in that boat as well. One last point I want to make on the schedule side of things. John Harper of SNY tweeted this schedule watch topic that I thought was very interesting. Let's say the Mets continue to stay in playoff position all the way up until that set at Truist, which is the second to last series of the season. When they get there, the Padres and Diamondbacks play each other. One team has to lose ground there. So that heightens the importance of that series all the more, where these 4 wildcard teams will all be playing each other at the same time. A prime opportunity for the Mets, but you have to get there first, obviously. And strength of schedule is pretty important this late in the season. I wanted to ask you this before we wrap up today's show. Give me one name you're looking out for to produce in this Blue Jays series. One name you think could be a massive difference maker on either side of the ball. Because I got one in mind.
Okay, you go first. I'm going to take a look.
I'm glad you said that. Brandon Nimmo. It's go time, baby. I mean, I was at the game on Saturday. Electric energy. Fans waited out that torrential downpour. We got the win. Nimmo smoked a ball to right field that I think must have missed fair territory by about 10 feet. And then he did the next day. He was about 20 feet away from a 2-homer weekend in his season turning around. I do think he's about to make it click. And I'm really hoping in Toronto he can start to produce a little bit. He's getting some tough pitching matchups, but this team, I can't say they can't last without him because they've continued to win despite his struggles. But imagine how powerful that top of the lineup can be with Lindor and Vientos playing the way they are and Nimmo sandwiched right between them, starting to slug the ball again. So I'm really looking for a big weekend or a big week from Brandon Nimmo.
Love that. I'm going to stay in the same neighborhood. I'm going to go with Pete Alonso.
Yeah,
he still needs a signature moment for the Mets to push forward. Not one game, but he needs to go on a stretch where he looks like the 53 home run guy
I need it.
that we saw. I would love to see it. His free agency price tag would love to see it. The New York Mets would love to see it because regardless of if Tyler McGill has a good outing, if Pete Alonso has a good day, that's a winning ball game.
I absolutely agree. I mean, those were the two guys I was battling between. It's just I feel like we say it every show. We're just waiting and waiting and waiting.
Sometimes you need your guys to step up, big guys, not just the ancillary pieces that stepped in or are good stories, like a Jose Iglesias, that kind of guy. Sometimes you need your big names to do big things. Francisco Lindor's been doing it all year. Mark Vientos has become a big name for these New York Mets, but you're going to need a Nimmo and you're going to need a Pete Alonso. I like those picks, and I'm going to be watching for sure.
It's go time, boys. What a fun time to be a Mets fan. Let's start a new win streak tonight. You got anything else, Jerry?
No, that's everything, my friend.
I think that's a good show. We'll see you guys sometime next week once this road trip wraps up. And hopefully the Mets are still hanging on to a wild card spot by then. But until then, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I always forget to say this, leave a like on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. Leave us a review and wish Jerry a happy belated birthday. How about that?
Hey, thank you. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets, baby. We'll see you soon.